Okay, I update more under this file, record.h. This was like my instructional objective last time. We pretty much cover the first two items, and the third item, never mind, not right now. But today I try to focus on number 4 and number 5. So if you look at the, yeah, wait a minute. This is, wait a minute, where am I? Well, oh, I know. I actually modified CP. Did I modify here? Yeah, I actually added in record.cpp. Okay, I like to say that the first we have already talked about the difference between passing by reference and passing by value and passing by pointer. This topic is, I kind of introduced that idea. I hope some of you using the simple program in object reference.cpp, you learned some of the stuff. But I do want to say that that topic itself could be really deep. So there were two things. For this coming Friday for the midterm, I tried to ask you the simpler kind in that direction. And also in this lecture, I'm going to talk about JSON, especially talk about some of the JSON programming. In the context of JSON object, I'm going to only do call by value because that's the easiest. I mean, if we go anything deeper into that, just show you how crazy the things can be. This is the slide which I think is interesting, but I'm not sure I want to waste too much time on that. Let me just tell you that what can be the really complicated stuff. Let me move my. Wait a minute. Can I shrink my window a little bit? Okay, so for example, you could write a pointer looks like this. It's just a pointer to integer. You could have all this kind of different way of specifying, and just look at, we put const. I mean, integer star const. I mean, it's hard for you to associate where the const, what kind of constant we're talking about. So this list of example, we haven't introduced the C++, the reference notation, but just look at the way people draw this nice diagram to actually tell you the relationship. For example, what is an integer star PTR? That means PTR is a pointer to integer. Well, what do we mean by const in star const PTR? I mean, how do you parse it? I mean, okay, by the way, I don't expect any ecs36b student will eventually learn this quarter. So that means this is not going to appear in the exam. But it's good for you to know there's a difference. Once you have to deal with later in your career, then you know where to look for information. For example, if I say const in star const PTR, meaning that PTR is a constant pointer, which the star go with that const, point to a constant integer. All right, and you can go over. There is multiple different things that you can do. So, I mean, the reason I talk about this is that unfortunately in the JSON CPP implementation, they use a lot of this pointer stuff. We'll show you some example, and then which make it kind of complicated for you to understand. But we will learn that later in the course. Just try to learn how the JSON information, when you do programmer, how do you make sure that this is called by reference, and how do you make sure this is called by value? So that's the critical one we want to learn. But at this moment, I just want to focus. We will only look at call by value. Okay, that's enough. Let's not complicate our life too much at this moment. So first, I want to review what is the JSON syntax. So I already provide some of the example, but let's try to see. There's only 4 rules, not too many, just 4 rules about JSON. The first one is that all the data is in name value pair, whatever is the key value pairs. I probably copied this from somebody using name. It's really key, which is a string or a name, colon, and whatever value. And that value could be different type. That value could be a number, either integer or double. Could be a string, could be a boolean, could be an array, could be object, or could be null. Null means is a JSON value, which means that there's nothing there. The null is important for us to understand whether you have a value or not. Okay, so to understand the JSON CPP, the full interface, I provide a link. You can actually go in there to see all the detail about the different data type, how to access to that, how to do conversion. You won't need to learn everything, but every time you want to do programming, you imagine something is happening, you can actually go there to check whether they have the interface to do that. Or you actually see somebody else is using some of the interface you're not familiar with, you can go to that link. So it's a good reference link. Nobody should remember everything there, but just really use it as a reference. And the thing is that the data is separated by commas. So it means that when you have a one value key value pair and the other key value pair, how do you separate? This is 2 different key value pair using comma. That's what they have. And then the curly bracket is represent the object. So you can have this one of the type is object. And what is object? Object is not a number. It's whatever you have in the curly bracket. We'll see a lot of object example. So syntactically, it looks like this. Okay, it's basically a pair of curly bracket. Every time you see a curly bracket in a JSON, you know is the data type is an object. Okay, and then the last one is the array. So what is array? Is curly bracket. It's curly bracket. It looks like this. Hope you can see that it's a curly bracket, and then you have a bunch of objects. A bunch of items, and the item separate by comma. Okay, so in this case, we have how many elements? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. We have 6 elements in an array. The important thing about the JSON array representation is that it's unlike some of the array or vector you have been using. So for example, in C, when you declare an array, you pretty much assume every element in an array must be the same data type, right? Must be an integer array or double array, pointer array, or some kind of array. But in JSON, this is pretty powerful that you can have an array with different kind of data type. For example, the first one is one type of object, the second may be another type of object. As long as the curly bracket is an object, and then you have a number 5, you have an array as an element, and then you can have a string, and then you can have another object. I mean, this is essentially in JSON, you have the flexibility to declare any type of array. You can put things together, and therefore, that's the pro and cons. That means the compiler cannot help you. The compiler doesn't have a strong type check against a JSON. So pretty much you have to use that interface I gave you to check what is the type of each of the elements of the array. That's a typical way, unless the programmer know that that array must be a certain type, they can just directly use it. So that's kind of interesting between the C++ style versus interpreter style. So that's why JSON is very closely associated with Python. The Python is a similar thing. It's very flexible, very powerful. You can put anything there. And so that's the array. Okay. All right. So I just talk about the concept, but later we'll see the example. Hopefully through the example, you learn about what JSON syntax, and also you learn how to do programming in JSON. All right. Any question at this moment for just telling you the rule about the JSON syntax? Okay, good. So the next topic I'm going to talk about is dump. So what is a dump? As I mentioned last time, dump is just essentially print out all the content within an object. That's a dump. So we kind of move one step advanced than the traditional dump. We talk about dump to JSON. So what is dump to JSON? So dump to JSON is I want to dump everything not directly to the printer, but I dump it to a particular type of object. And that object is a JSON value object. By the way, what is JSON column value? This is essentially the C++ way of representing a JSON. So anytime you declare a object, just like you declare integer or declare GPS, now you try to declare something called JSON value. So this is already included when you have include JSON/JSON. When you have that, you essentially be able to use that class that's defined by somebody else. As long as you include JSON/JSON.h, you can have that. All right. And then essentially you try to dump everything into a JSON object. And so that is one thing. I hope you that's step number one. But the important things to associate it with that concept is that, well, how do you handle the information that's contained in a what I call composite or complex object? So what do I mean by complex object? I just want to show you a picture about what a complex object looks like. So this is the picture that talk about what is a composite or complex object. So essentially, the object follow this organization. It can be broke down into lower level component, which they have this hierarchy and they store the information, they put it together, eventually they into a bigger object. So this is not surprise, because if you want to represent anything, think about anything that we live with, it's pretty much this kind of composite object format. Okay, so when we try to dump it, how do you actually be able to go through the whole thing? I mean, we talk about dump, we say we want to dump all the content. Then essentially what we want is that I want to dump not just the highest level, but I want to actually get down to everything so I can include all the information in a nice format. We call it JSON, but linearization is the representation we want to have. Okay, so how should we do that? That's a good, very important object-oriented design and object-oriented programming principle I want to convey to you through the example dump to JSON. Okay. So let me tell you what we want to do. So in order to do that, let me first tell you how we're going to do it, and then we're going to see the code, how we do that implementing code. So the way we do it is this, is we are going to use this concept called recursion. Okay, so I hope you still remember the meaning of recursion means that you try to recursively call the same function to a lower level, usually follow a tree of structure. I mean, if you look at the composite object, it is a tree that we are trying to recursively call the same function one level down until we hit what? The button of the whole tree. Every single leaf will be covered, and then we kind of push the result back. Okay, so that's That's a very important programming paradigm called recursion. Okay, so in order to do that, we need one thing. So we need to have the function dump to JSON. That's going to be increment at every single class that we have. So in other words, we need to have dump to JSON in GPS. We need to have a dump to JSON at thing.h. We need to have a dump to JSON at person and the record, whatever, in homework too. So every single class you design, you need to provide this dump to JSON. All right, so let's actually take a look at that. And conceptually, what we're doing, we're following this tree. We're following this tree such that every single object or class, this is the essential. By the way, this is a what we call a composite structure about a complex object that each of this represent what we call containment hierarchy. Sometimes meaning that the box contains the three object or class, and then this class actually contains the other two, and this class or this object contains the other two. So it's a containment hierarchy about that complex object. So what we're doing is we design dump to JSON on every single class that's actually touches by this hierarchy. So by the way, for example, these two, they're two different objects, but they might belong to the same class. They might belong to the same class. Therefore, we only need to declare dump to JSON at every single class we want to use. But the hierarchy might have objects. So by the way, this graph, I should be more specific. When I say this is the containment hierarchy, each of the element in this picture, every node in this element is an object. It's not a class. Okay, we will see another concept called class hierarchy, not containment hierarchy. But in the class hierarchy, each of the node is a class. And we use class hierarchy to represent a very critical relationship called inheritance in object-oriented programming. But at this moment, this is what we call the composite object, or it's a containment hierarchy. All right, so let's go back to your record. So in the record, so this is, you can see that this is a dump to JSON. This particular version of dump to JSON is belong to the class record at the highest level. So you think about we're in the root of the tree that we have over there. Okay, so let me go to record.h. So record.h, we have to look at what are the sub-objects that belong to record, is usually be declared over here. So you can see that I have a few things. One is called who person, and one is called what thing, and then one is called where, and one is called when, right? We have a composition at this level. Higher level is the record. The one level down has a 4 element. What's a 4 element? 2 of them are array. Things and person, they're array. Remember, at least in JSON, you could have a array as an object as well. So, and then we have 2 other objects, which is represent the GPS location and time of the event. So we have where and when over here. Okay, so apparently we need to design dump to JSON for all 4 classes. Means that we have a defined dump to JSON to GPS DD, JV time, and a bunch of other things. But let's look at the simple case first. Let's look at how do I dump JSON for this 2, just where and when. So let's look at the code. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you this. Hopefully you understand this view line. You can actually really learn about this this important principle. I hope that's my objectives. I want you to learn the concept about this kind of recursion way of representing an object from a complex and composite object. Okay, so first, I have to declare what is a JSON object. Remember I said what is a JSON object? Is JSON column value. Okay, JSON column value, let me just show you this. The reference link I showed you earlier is this link. This is the link called JSON column value class reference. That's the class. That's actually the most important class we need to use for this particular lecture. Okay, so I declare this as a result. Okay, so what is a result? Result is an object. And what is the object? Sorry, it's a variable. And what the data type of result is belong to the class of JSON value. All right. So the first thing is you will say, okay, if I'm here, okay, just look at this line. What should be the initial value of result at this stage? I haven't done anything to the result. I just basically say, hey, result is a JSON value object, and I haven't done anything. So what do you think is the content? I already wrote it down. There is a null. There's nothing. So the way to really nicely to write program is that we know what's going on. This is a very important capability for you to learn. Every time you touch a JSON, you want to see what's going on. So what you can do is that you just write this line of code. This line of code is a standard, pretty standard CL program, but in the middle, you see that I have a result, and then I said dot to style string. Okay, to style string is a member function of JSON column value. And to style string is essentially convert the internal representation of a JSON object into a string format, into a linear string. But the thing is, I said to style string is that it will automatically put in the indent and automatically put the line break such that the result is kind of useful. Okay, so let's just run this program at this point. Okay, I'm going to run the program. Okay, there is a bunch of things, but this is what I call a style string because it provides the nice tab and for you to see the structure. But where was that first? Is you see is here, null. That's the null it print. So that line is correspond to this particular output. So when a JSON value object is empty, when you print it, it will print a null to let us know it's a JSON object without anything. Okay, fine. And just remember this. See, which two we want to print at this moment is the GPS location where and the JV time, which is when, right? So you can see that now I first print where, and then I print when and where. Okay, these two are, I'm going through the next few lines of code. Okay, it's here. All right, so far, I hope you're happy with this first three lines. All they're doing is creating a blank JSON value object, and it printed, and the output is what we expected. So we feel good when we see that. Okay, now I'm going to do the where. So how do I represent a key value pair? Remember, that's the first syntax rule of JSON. What's the first syntax rule of JSON? Saying that you always deal with a name or key value pair, which means that I need to, when I want to add a particular key value pair to that JSON object, I need to tell them what's the key and what's the value, right? That's what we need to do. And let's look at the syntax. This line is exactly doing that. So it says that result, and results here is that the same object I just create. And then I said, what should be the key? The key is where. The key is where. And then I assign whatever on the right-hand side, which I will tell you that's related to recursion, because why is I'm calling another dump to JSON, but it's actually a lower level. I'm calling this where, which is the one attribute that dump to JSON. But don't worry about that part yet. But just worry about this part of the syntax. If you're a Python programmer, this should be really familiar to you. How many of you already done Python programming? So you have seen this, right? Pretty much. This is the basic of Python. I should confess. This part of the C++, we kind of borrowed it from Python. Okay, programming language, they do share idea from one language to the other. That this part is really close to the Python style. So essentially saying that, hey, I want to specify the key is where, and the value is on the right-hand side. Okay, now go back to those programmer never use Python. It's a C programmer. Have you ever seen the usage of the array representation in C and C++? Array means what? In C and C++, array is a bracket, right? So have you ever seen the usage of array index, which is not an integer? So usually when we do array, we say result 0, result 1, result 2, right? Have you ever seen anything like a result where? A string. Have you ever seen that in ecs36b? We never seen that, right? But how come that now I'm doing C++? Programming should be backward compatible to C, and suddenly I'm doing an array, at least an array representation within the bracket. I'm using something else. I'm not using index. How can this be possible? I'm actually challenging you based on what you learned so far. Yes.
So it's like in C arrays, like you can have a lot of pointers to arrayed on different things.
Okay, I give you a hint. That's a good try. But the hint is to do with compiler, to do with some concept we learned already this quarter. I think there's a hint. Yes. Exactly. Well, remember I said you can overloading everything operator, and including the bracket pair. The bracket pair is overloaded. That's why I like to discuss, to let you at least expose to operator overloading, because you can actually do that. So let me show you what this is. This is what the JSON CPP people are doing. So I want to go to, yeah. So you know what? Yeah, okay. Let me find. I use this one. You see that this is the code. JSON CPP, by the way, JSON CPP is kind of nice. It's open source. So you can see all the source code, how they implement, how they declare. And they declare a lot of this operator overloading. This is a value. See, reference. They actually return the reference. Don't worry about that. Don't let this discourage you at this moment, okay? It make our life miserable anyway. So, okay. So you see that the traditional way is operator overloading, operator of the bracket, is array index, right? That's just an integer. But they also have the operator overloading a bit over here. You see this too? This one is operator overloading with the bracket. And then what's the index portion? What did I do? I hate this, sorry. Did I just lost it? Okay, so look at this, line 476. Instead of integer, you can overload it with a character string. This is a C string. This is a C string. So meaning that you can put a C string in there to have that function. And of course, inside the function, later we'll look at the source code. It's nothing magic. You just basically try to redirect your output. You can put a string there, and then you can implement that. And then also look at line 482. So they have the interface has both the C style string and the C++ string. So in line 482, is essentially a C++ style string, std string. And then again, I'm overloading the operator. So number one, you see that I can overload the operator. Number two, the return of that operator is what? Is a reference to a value object. Okay, so basically we'll return an object. So what is this? Remember, it's a reference. So let's take a look at this line of code. If we take a look at this part, what does this mean? Is that I am trying to retrieve a key, which is a where. And this will give me back a reference to whatever value of that where. So there are two cases. This JSON object already have a key value pair, which is a where. It could be also the key value pair, sorry, the JSON object doesn't have the where. So it will return a reference to an empty value, and then you can assign the new value into that. Okay, let me repeat again. The whole line is essentially saying that after you've done that, I kind of insert a key value pair. Where is the key and value is whatever this function recursively return. So that's why now, let me actually go for two more lines and then we can look at the result. So after I've done this result, where, I mean, this two line is just basically trying to print the value. And then I do also similarly, I do result when the same style, and I call this when.dump to JSON. You see that it's really what I did so far is three lines of code. The first line, I declare an object. The second line, I assign the where. And then the third line, I assign the when. Okay, and let's try to see what's the result up to this point. So it's kind of nice that you can see that those three lines, how they do, and you can just print it. You can see that the first line, we saw this already, it printed out a null. But after I dumped the where, I said where assign, then when I look at the object content, now the object content has a where, and what's the whole thing after the colon? That was the return value from the this to the where dump to JSON. So over there, they actually dump the whole thing in a JSON object format. Remember, in JSON, every time you see a pair of curly bracket, it's an object. So that's why the key is where the content value part is a object itself. Okay, so now you can see object contain another object. And then after you've done another thing, the first thing you do where, and then you do when. When you do a when, you see that now you have this portion. You have the where is still there, and then you have the when, which is the result, the time versus whatever, and then using comma to separate. Okay, so that's this three line essentially progress to slowly build up your JSON object, and then you can actually see that. Okay, any question? Yes. This one, right? Right, right. So you can think about this is the JSON object I created. Initially has nothing, right? Then I put some coffee, so now you have a coffee. Then I put some sugar. And then you have both coffee and sugar, they're actually representing it. So essentially, that's a good question. I think it's important is that in JSON, unless you remove it, it just keep adding the stuff. And you can remove it by setting something to be null. Whenever you set something to be null, that particular attribute is gone. Okay. Okay, it's by the way, for those of you familiar with C and C++, there's two different styles. In C and C++, everything you have to predefine what's the attribute, and then you start to use it. But in JSON, you adaptively adding new thing. Yes. How do I define where and when? That's programmer's responsibility. So in C++ programmer, we usually have to predefine, right? Where and when. Let me give you an example. I like that question because it is so important for two different style of programming. All right. So this is a record, and I have some attribute which I define, and over here I define where and when. Right. This is a C++, but it's not automatically converting to that. So therefore, the programmer implement the dump to JSON has to manually to put where as a string, because this where is a variable where, but this is a string where. So they're different. Well, another thing is that maybe we can write a different kind of compiler to help us to automatically generate it, but at this moment, that's not working. Does that address your question? Good, okay. Thank you, all the question. All right, so now we have the capability to be able to, okay, a few things. We have the capability to be able to insert the C++ portion of the object into a JSON object by using this overloaded bracket example. Okay, so by the way, I will ask you overloading example on Friday, but I won't ask you overloading in the context of JSON this Friday. Okay, I consider this the more advanced question. By Friday, I want to just learn the basic idea about operator overloading, but just let you know that feature is so useful. You can write a program to develop like a JSON so easily. You can essentially bridge the gap between C++ and Python this way. Okay. All right. So now I want to do recursion. So let's look at where, and you see that now I'm talking about the value on the left-hand side, right-hand side. And the right-hand side, I said this to the where dot dump to JSON. By the way, can someone help me? What is this to the where? What is this to the where? What is this part? I just put it here. I want you to guess if you don't know what it is. Okay. Remember, my number one objective is I want you to be able to guess. Yes, please. It's a member of record. That's correct. Thank you. Then follow up. What's the type? What's the data type of that member where? What's the data type? Anybody? Yes, please. GPS, right? So in other words, when I do this, it's really a GPS object dump to JSON, right? This portion is a GPS object, and then call dump to JSON. Remember, I said every single class need to have a dump to JSON. So let's actually go to gps.cpp. You see that? This must have the member function GPS dd : dump to JSON. And what's the return type of the JSON? The GPS underscore dd dot dump to JSON. What is this function return? Yes. JSON colon value, right? It's a JSON object. That's the same as record colon dump to JSON. They're the same. The return type is always a JSON object. So, okay, you can see that there is a consistency about what we're doing and basically try to do this so we can do recursion. Okay, now let's actually look at this part. Does this sound familiar? Again, I define an empty JSON object. JSON colon value result. It's basically a object. And then let's forget about the if then else statement at this for the moment. Okay, let's forget about why I said that. But let's look at this. I said result latitude is equal to this to the latitude. Okay, what is this? Again, operator overloading. This latitude is the key of one of the attributes. And then because now the latitude, this to the latitude is already a basic type. So I'm already hitting the root of the tree in the composite object. This is already a double. So I'm already hitting the end. So I don't need to call, we never define like a double version of dump to JSON. We could potentially, but that's just make it more complicated. And so this is already here. So the key is what? What is the key in this line? Latitude. What's the value? The value is whatever double number that you have with this to the latitude. So you can see that now I formed a key value pair. The key is latitude. The value is a double. It's a floating point. Floating point is one of the basic type in the 6 of the JSON type. So that basically give me result to the latitude. And then I have the longitude similarly. And then I have what we call location label this. So this 3 line essentially put 3 things into that result. And guess what? Let's actually do this. Let's try to print this one over here. I'm just printing whatever result to style string. That's my good friend. And then let's try to run it. Let's see what happened. Okay, remember we have that null. This is the null. And here this part, is that familiar? This is the output just generated by what I did, modify in GPS.cpp. I kind of print after you put the 3 things. What is that result object? So that is the result with those 3 key value pairs, latitude, longitude, and location label. By the way, if you notice that the 2 style string, they kind of lay out alphabetically based on the key, okay, by the key string. And this one is going to be what? Is going to, let me go back. Okay, what I just showed you was this line. I print out the result. And what I did, I returned the result. I returned the whole thing with the bracket, with the 3 key value pair. I returned the whole thing to whoever called this function dump to JSON as a JSON value object, because result is a JSON value object. So now we can go back to record.cpp. Now you take a look at this line. By the way, this is what we just did when we go to gps.cpp. Is this to the where dump to JSON is going to return that JSON value object. And then I assign that to the where to form another key value pair. But this time, the value is no longer a simple value like a double or string, but itself is an object. That's why when I run this program, you will see you will see this, okay, here's a null, and here is the one that's actually printed inside the GPS.cpp. And now you can see that after I did that assignment by the operator overloading to the key where I actually essentially put this part into this part, and then you see that I start to build my composite object in the JSON representation. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I think that's for most of you who have never done both sides of the C and Python. This is going to be something new. Any question? Okay, I will talk about the midterm on Wednesday a little bit as well. Okay, so just tell you that what the format and some of the things you need to worry about.